guys, for today's session we are going to work on very special tip in Flutter on how to cache an HTTP request. So this will help us so when we don't have internet or when we don't want to make multiple HTTP requests on server. We will need two dependencies. Like the first dependency will be a DIO and the second dependency will be shared preference. So the first dependency will be about making HTTP request and the second one will be about saving the response of the HTTP request in our shared preference so that we can minimize the number of requests we make on server. So let's start with our So first of all, we are going to create a class that will be using to call this DIO HTTP request and save the request into the shared preference. So let's create that file. Let's call it request maker. Then we create a class, we call it request maker. Then we have static function. Then we declare get function. Then here we'll be passing string URL. Then here we have to even make it asynchronous. Then here we will call DIO await DIO dot get. Then we pass URL. So then here we say const response. Then we will be returning the response. Okay, then we declare var instead of const. So here it will be where we'll be requiring our response. Then we have init state. Then we have widgets binding dot instant add post frame from callback. Then here we have function. This is where we are going to call our HTTP function void load data. Then we'll be calling our function from here. So then here we are going to create to request that created class request maker dot get. There we will pass our JSON class. Then here we have JSON URL. Then var response here. Then we await. We have to make this function asynchronous. So we call the function. So for this function we are going to change it so that it will be saving the request into our shared preference. So after getting response, we have to check if the response status code equal to 200 to make sure that the response is valid and we got the data we are supposed to get. So with the response we have to receive the data into the shared preference. Let's declare the variable of shared preference pref equal await shared preferences dot get instance. Then here will be preference set string. Then the key will be the URL and the value will be the response value dot data code dynamic. Then we have to encode it to with the JSON encode. Then we save it to the preference, and before retrieving URL you have to check that it exists in our preference. If it doesn't exist, then we make an HTTP request. So here we will check if pref dot get, let's do pref.get URL. We check that this URL exists in our preference. Var fetch, then we check if fetch not equal to null, it means that it exists in our preference, then we are going to return this response. Return JSON decode fetch, then you have to get string because we saved it as a string. So if it doesn't exist, it will be equal to null, then you have to make an HTTP request, and after getting it we will be saving it into our shared preference. So without that we'll be returning null, then we go with the response.data. So we can make our static function will be returning dynamic data. So we have first of all to print the response and make sure we get the data. So let's refresh so that it can call this function. Let's see that you can see that it's printing the JSON. So let's display this JSON to the user interface. Let's have REST dynamic data equal to REST. So we'll be setting set state data equal to the response. So we are going to save this response in our variable. So then we have REST builder so that we can show our REST view of the data we fetched from the internet. Context, then we have index, then after that we have item count, we have data.length, then we return REST tire, and you have title text. We have got to get item, then equal to data index, then here we'll have item title, then we return like this. So let's refresh and it make another request. So you can see we have rested our data here. You can see that we made our first HTTP request, and if we are going to refresh, it's not going to make another HTTP request because the requests have been cached into our shared preference. So as you see, it's not even making an HTTP request because we have saved our data into the local preference. Even we managed to disconnect our internet, then we refresh, data will be there because data have been saved already. So let's refresh and see. So you can see even without internet we can have our data because it's cached. So you can add more parameters like the duration, make sure that it will be invalidated after a certain time. Maybe you can say it will be cached after 1 hour or after 2 days or after a week. You make sure that you clean the data after certain time. Those are the parameters you can add, but that's the main idea of how to cache the HTTP request in our local machine or our local devices. So thank you very much. Thank you for watching this video, and make sure that you share it, like it, and subscribe. So thank you so much.